with excuses. I don't have the time. I don't have the money. I don't have the energy. I really don't want to do that right now. I'll do it next month. And it's just one excuse after the next, and he's just so frustrated. He can, don't get me wrong, he could conquer and destroy this world with just one believer. You know, one person calling him by his name. If he didn't have one person, he would just go to the rocks.
Right.
He doesn't need us. You know, in a literal sense, he does not need us. But seeing that there's so many millions of us that claim that we love him, can't we do at least what he asks? Can we be open to what he wants us to do?
And most of the people, they think, well, I don't have the talent to do this, or I don't have the ability to do that.
And he doesn't lead you into what he doesn't open the door for you to do.
Right. And God, those are the people that God wants to use, are the people that feel they can't contribute to anything, or they're, you know, well, I'm too short, I don't have the ability of speaking in front of people or anything like that. That's who God wants to use, you know. That.
Yeah, I can't even talk half the time.
Right.
He's got me doing a radio show.
Like when I first called in, I'm shaking so bad. Like when I talk in front of people, my face gets red and everything like that. But I know that's the reason why God is using me. I know that you have like a time schedule for your show, but is it okay if I tell my testimony?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I got out of high school in 2001, and I remember when I was in there, none of my family is saved basically, but I remember when I was in there, I got past boot camp, and I was in my tech school. I was in the shower, and I was scared because I was in there when September 11th happened, and I remember I just dropped to my knees, and I was in the shower, and I just dropped to my knees, and I started praying, and I was like, God, you know, whatever it is that I've done wrong, please forgive me and just get me out of here, you know, because I don't want to be in here now, you know, because of September 11th, and I knew we were going to have to go to war and stuff like that. And 30 minutes later, I called my sister, or no, actually she called me, and she said, without me saying anything, she called me, and she goes, the first words out of her mouth, she goes, 30 minutes ago, oh, hold on 1 second. Okay, are you there?
Yeah.
Okay. And so she said 30 minutes ago I was in the shower praying for you that you would get out of the Air Force. And the 30 minutes ago, or the 30 minutes before that, I was in the shower too, and I broke down and started crying and asked God to do that. So I got really sick, and actually I was already kind of sick at that point, but then I started to get really sick, and they sent me to the hospital, and they had to give me like 3 of those big bags of water, like, you know, they run it through your IVs when you're dehydrated.
Yeah.
And they said a really dehydrated person only needs 2 of them. And so I was like really dehydrated. So then I was still sick after that, and they kept giving me antibiotics and stuff like that. And they said, well, maybe you need to go take like an asthma test, because the Air Force is the only branch of the military that you can't have asthma in to be in the military. So I went and took it, and I failed it. Well, I got home. They had to send me home and discharge me, but they put on my DD-214 that I lied to them before I got in the Air Force and said that I had asthma before I came in, which wasn't true. And so I went through the VA and told them, you know, this isn't right. You know, this is going to be on my record. I won't be able to get a good job or anything like that. So they said, well, it's going to be a while. This was in January of 2002, and they said it's going to take a long process and everything, but we'll try and help you out. So I got my job. I came back home and was living with my parents, and I got my job back. And when I was at my job, I met a guy that was going to get married on May 3rd of 2002, and he asked me to come to his wedding and everything because we started, you know, to hang out and stuff like that. Well, one night it was like 2 weeks before the wedding started. There was a guy his fiance's brother came to Arby's with them, and we sat down, and the whole time he was talking about God and the Bible, and I never heard anybody, you know, talk about God this much and everything, so I thought it was really weird. So then the wedding came around, and he kind of took me aside and started showing me the Bible and stuff, and you know, this and that, and I was like, wow, you know, this is crazy. I never seen anybody that knows the Bible as much as you do and stuff like that. Well, he lived about 90 miles away from me in a small town called Liberal, Kansas, and I was living in Lake, Kansas at the time. Well, on the weekends, I would work Monday through Friday, and on the weekends I would go to his house, and all we would do is basically just stay up all day and all night just reading the Bible and stuff. And so about 3 months into doing that, he got this crazy idea that, we should start a ministry together and we needed to put our money together and stuff like that. So I went into my bank account and took everything out. It came out to be like $2,481, and I scrounged up every penny that I could find on the ground because, I wanted to do something good for God. I just felt like, wow, this is awesome. I can't believe that God's using me and stuff like this. So I took that money and gave it to him, to hold, and he didn't put any money to it either. So I was like, well, that's kind of weird. But 7 days later, he took that money and bought studio equipment with it. And so his wife was like, well, why did you do that? Why would you do that without talking to Mark about it? And so he said, well, I have a way of talking to Mark. And so he called me up and said, we need to sit down and talk and stuff. And so I drove over to his house, and we talked about it. And he's like, well, I bought studio equipment, and I believe that, I'm going to rap and you're going to sing, and we're going to make like these CDs for God, and then we're going to sell them on the street, and that's how we're going to make our money. And I was fine with that. I was like, okay, that sounds good. And then he said, but there's one stipulation. I have to leave my wife and my 4 children. And at that point, I was like, what? I didn't understand too much about God, but what I did know was Ephesians 5:25, love your wife as Christ loved the church and gave himself for it. And I told him that, and I said, I don't want to be a part of this. I don't want to be have anything to do with you leaving your wife and your children. And their age ranges were from 2 to 8, and they were so beautiful. I mean, he's got such beautiful children. And I was just like, your one main ministry is to your family. How can a man take care of the house of God if he can't even take care of his own family? And so he said, well, I'm going to go with or without you. Well, backtracking here for a second, when I was there one time during that 3 months, a pastor in Topeka called, and he told me, he was talking. He put him on speakerphone, and so all 3 of us were talking and everything. And he asked me if I had, like Yahoo Messenger or MSN Messenger, and I told him yes. So we started kind of talking on the internet when I would get home too. And well, getting back to this one guy, he took that money, bought the studio equipment. He had some extra money left over from it. He sold his house, for $11,000, gave his wife about $3,000 of it, took the $8,000 for himself, and the rest of the money that I had given him. Went down to Dallas, Texas, because he felt like God told him to go to the potter's house, and there he would hear God's words. And if anybody knows anything about T.D. Jakes, he calls his ministry the potter's house. Mm. So he felt like he had to go down there, and that's where he would hear God's words. So he said, I'm going to go down there with or without you. I'm going to do this because I feel this is what God wants me to do. So he left his family. So I was like, kind of sad. It wasn't about the money. It was more the fact that he left his children, and the fact that, he used part of my money to do it. Yeah. I felt guilty, that I ruined somebody's family. That's the way I felt. So I started talking to the pastor online, and, we were talking back and forth, and he was telling me about the church that he was pastoring up there, and all the stuff that was going on. And, I want to believe the best in everybody. And so he told me that, maybe you should come up here and live with me until you can get on your feet and everything, and you can come here and stay with me for a while, and then you can get a place for yourself. So I went up there, and he kind of made moves on me, if you want to put it in that term. And so I lived there for about 4 months and everything, and so then we kind of got in an argument, and he said that I should go home, and I felt like I wanted to go home too, because I felt deceived and kind of trapped, that because I was up there by myself and didn't